France has condemned the Israeli army's indiscriminate fire on Palestinian demonstrators at the border with the Gaza Strip on Saturday. The 9 people killed, including video journalist Yasser Mortaha, were buried in Gaza on Saturday. France reiterates its strong disapproval of the indiscriminate fire of the Israeli army, French Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Agnes von der Mulle said in a statement. All possible light must be shed on these serious events. Israeli troops fired tear gas and live rounds at thousands of demonstrators on the Second Great March of Return, calling for the right of return for the families of the roughly 700,000 Palestinians who were driven out of or fled their homes when the State of Israel was created in 1948. At least 491 Palestinians were wounded and 9 people killed, including Mortaha, who was wearing a flak jacket with press markings. On the previous demonstration on the 30th of March, 17 Palestinians were killed. On both occasions, some protesters burnt tires and threw stones and Molotov cocktails at the soldiers. France calls on the authorities concerned to exercise the utmost restraint and stresses that the use of force must be proportionate, in accordance with international humanitarian law, to prevent further victims, the Foreign Ministry statement added. Army promises to investigate journalist death. The Israeli army has promised to investigate Mortaha's death but insisted that its troops only fired on instigators. Its troops are operating in accordance with clear rules of engagement, and it does not intentionally target journalists, it added. The Palestinian Journalists Union says 5 reporters were injured on Friday. Press Freedom Campaign Reporters Without Borders said Mortaha was obviously the victim of an intentional shot. RSF condemns absolutely the deliberate shooting of journalists by the Israeli army, said Secretary General Christophe Deloire on Twitter. The Israeli Journalists Union called for clarification on the Palestinian reporters hit by soldiers' fire in a letter to the Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot. A group of 70 NGOs active in Gaza called for an independent and transparent inquiry into the illegal murder of civilians in Gaza. Israelis unrepentant. Israeli leaders were unrepentant, however. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saluted the Israeli soldiers who protect us at all times. The protesters talk about human rights but actually want to crush the Jewish state, he said. We won't let them, and Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said Sunday there were no naive people in Gaza. Everyone's connected to Hamas, everyone gets a salary from Hamas. And all the activists trying to challenge us and breach the border are Hamas military wing activists, he told Israeli Public Radio. The demonstrations are planned to continue every Friday for the next 6 weeks. Israel claims that Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, is exploiting the protests to carry out violent attacks on Israel. Thank you for listening to my channel. Please subscribe for get hot news in the world.